don't forget in your comments to put hashtag release the Snyder Cut in your comments under this video. If you don't, I will delete your comment. So if you want your comment to be seen, then don't forget to put in hashtag release the Snyder Cut in your comment. If you don't want to support the release of the Snyder Cut, it's a different story. I'll let your comment roll, okay? These Marvel fanboys. Oh, man. All I told you guys is just keep your mouth shut. Infinity War's coming around the corner, then there's Ant-Man. You don't want to really be doing this. You know what I'm saying? But the Marvel boys, they wouldn't listen. So, hey, I got to respond. So in my video to the Marvel fanboys, I say this, which I ask people to speed up. But Hurt Marvel Fanboys said, Larry Bonson, DC's themes are pretentious because the characters are all about persona and their personality is shallow. So when I hear theme, I can't help but chuckle. Marvel has its faults, but their character's personality is what sells. All right, we're going to go into that, right? This clown, man. Oh, how can a theme be pretentious? A theme determines gravity of characters. And no, DC does not focus on the persona of their characters. Their persona is a derivative of the story or derivative of the theme that the director is trying to portray. Case in point, when you look at masterpiece trilogies, the personas of the characters are not necessarily flamboyant or necessarily exciting. Batman Begins was built off of the theme of the beginnings of fear for criminals. That Batman represented a beacon of hope to Gotham. In Batman The Dark Knight, we see that the world, Gotham, falls into chaos. But in The Dark Knight Rises, we see, though through pain he has to go through, we see Gotham rise back and is saved. Okay? And it connects to the first movie. Thematically, these movies, these trilogies are masterpieces because of the themes, not because of the characters. The characters serve the theme of the story. And that's what makes the characters and personas have depth. Shallow characters do not facilitate the theme being carried through, say, for instance, a trilogy or a story. Alright? So, for you to say that DC characters are shallow, that's funny, man. That's funny. Rise of the Planet of the Apes was about the beginnings of how we saw the beginnings of how the apes learned how to talk and how they were able to communicate with each other and form their own communities. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was where they formed communities and they separated themselves from mankind. And War for the Planet of the Apes is where the apes now had to respond to mankind when they want to wipe them out. And this was their way of responding to mankind. Okay? So thematically, there's a connection between each of these movies in the trilogy. And that's what makes trilogies masterpieces. And everybody agrees that the Planet of the Apes trilogy is a masterpiece. Similarly, with other masterpieces such as Star Wars. And here, the theme is actually encapsulated in the title. Star Wars Episode 4 is A New Hope. This is the rise of hope for the Resistance. Episode 5 is The Empire Strikes Back, which is the fall of the Resistance before the Empire. And then Episode 6 is The Return of the Jedi, which is the rise of the Resistance. And finally, their breaking of the yoke of the Empire to have their freedom, finally. So you can see thematically there's a progression here. Similarly, with Lord of the Rings trilogy, the characters serve a theme. So the first one is about the discovery and the harnessing of the ring, called the Fellowship of the Ring, in which the ring has powers, and the people who have the responsibility of carrying those powers, always a responsibility with power, they are challenged as well. And we see Frodo go through a lot of different things. He's very key to the success here. And then we have Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, where the evil powers seem to be taking over everything and succeeding, like The Empire Strikes Back, you know, like, what was the other trilogy I was talking about? Like The Dark Knight, where evil seems to succeed. And then we have The Return of the King, which is the rise, the return, the rise, the freedom of Middle-earth from the hands of the evil power that would have wanted to capture the ring. Okay? So at the end of the day, this is the trilogy, Lord of the Rings. All right? I think we also had a Hobbit trilogy of some kind. So at the end of the day, these are memorable trilogies because thematically these characters fill in. They fill into the theme thematically. So when you talk about characters, we're not talking about persona. We're talking about more thematically how these characters fit in with the theme, the overriding theme. And that's what makes trilogies so memorable. We got the Matrix trilogy. Think of it however you may. Once we say the Matrix and then we say trilogy, everybody knows what that is. And this is another notably universally accepted trilogy as a great trilogy because there's so much breakdown philosophically and otherwise. And again, these characters are not the flamboyant characters. They don't have a ton of personality in them, but what you have is they serve the story, they serve the theme. So we have the Matrix, first of all, which introduces us to the Matrix, all conceptual stuff. Then the Matrix Reloaded, where we see that Neo has mastered the Matrix, and so it's being reloaded. And in that, we have the concept of Zion introduced, and how Zion has to be saved. And it is like Empire Strikes Back, etc., that Zion is about to fall. And then Matrix Revolution comes and shows that Neo is able to save the Matrix, also save the machine world, also save humanity. So again, thematically, there is a flow there, and that's what makes these trilogies so great, and they are considered by many as masterpieces. Now, what's interesting about the Matrix trilogy is this. At the time it came out, especially Reloaded and then Revolutions, they were not considered great works like The Matrix. In fact, they were considered disappointments. In fact, the trilogy was considered a flop. Very interesting because those movies made a ton of money. But it is just that people's expectations at the time for what Reloaded and then Revolutions would be, the Wachowskis had other ideas about where they're going with these movies. And the interesting thing about it, again, is the growth and development of Neo. The character goes through a lot of growth and a lot of arc. And by the end, conceptually, we understand why there are different versions of the Matrix and why this anomaly is reinserted into it and so on. So it's very interesting because nothing is new under the sun. And just to watch how these Wachowski brothers fashion and shape that, the Matrix trilogy is one of the greatest and most misunderstood masterpieces of all time. And that is what is said in this statement here. It is a misunderstood masterpiece. Why would the word masterpiece even be there with the Matrix? Because it's an area of controversy. There's some people who love the trilogy, some people don't. Most people like the first Matrix, but even now, some people looking back will say, it's not all that. But when you look at it as a trilogy, it is underrated, definitely. Now, that's interesting because same thing happened with The Empire Strikes Back. When The Empire Strikes Back came back, we had a backlash in the community and the world, just like what happened with Batman v Superman. So I find that very interesting. In fact, at the time when Revolutions was about to come out in 2013, the date should be somewhere here. Here it is. You see there, October 2013. When the actual Revolutions was coming out after Reloaded, they were questioning whether the Matrix trilogy would be a millennial masterpiece or postmodern pastiche or whatever it is. Pastiche, maybe. And why they said that was because it looks like it's going to be a flop. So it's very funny that now in retrospect, people looking back at that, let me just show you the date of this one. It's August 28, 2017. They're talking about it being a masterpiece. So one of the things about some movies are immediately accepted as a masterpiece, trilogies. And some other trilogies, it takes time for people to appreciate them and understand what they really were. That happened with Star Wars. That happened with the Matrix trilogy. Okay? This is very important for you people to understand. Again, I just want you to see what the media was saying at the time. Here again, some other people's comments on it. The underrated masterpiece is The Matrix Reloaded, which people thought was underrated. And when you look at the DCEU, it also has a trilogy. Now, there's not a consensus yet as whether this trilogy is a masterpiece. For me, I already know this trilogy is a masterpiece as is. As much as it is not a complete masterpiece, as some people will tell you, it is an incompleted masterpiece because we haven't really gotten the full Zack Snyder Justice League here, which is why we are talking about release the Snyder Cut, right, people? But it's very interesting how people's views have changed over time concerning BVS and Man of Steel. When those movies first came out, they were very controversial. And that is something, notice, when movies come out and they're controversial, it means there really are good movies. There's really good stuff in them because when people cannot agree on a movie, it makes people think. And when a movie makes you think, not just about the movie making process and the movie itself, but about life, that is a damn good movie, okay? And so that's what happened with these movies. Man of Steel Batman v Superman, and now Justice League. Each one of these movies has been highly controversial. Every single one of them when they came out. And it's interesting, as time goes along, people are talking about Man of Steel being a masterpiece, which I don't think so. And Batman v Superman being a masterpiece, which is undoubtedly that. And Justice League being a masterpiece, which this current version I don't think is a masterpiece, but that's not the point. The point is, the trilogy of itself is definitely set apart from any other trilogy I've ever seen in the content and what it's saying. So I think that this trilogy is a masterpiece, and if it is not a masterpiece right now, it will be when the Snyder Cut comes out. Now, it's interesting, like I said before, February this year, Revenger Submission says, looking back on Batman v Superman, a misunderstood masterpiece. Same thing they said about Matrix Reloaded, and Matrix Revolution, and the Matrix trilogy, right? And what's interesting about that is, if you go and look back now, well, obviously, at Empire Strikes Back, at the time, there was this big outrage about it. It was terrible. Horrible movie. And now, so many years after, they could hail it the greatest Star Wars movie ever. It's funny, isn't it? Just like how there's this big outrage for Star Wars The Last Jedi. Looking back on it, they're going to rave that movie. And that's what these movies do. When they become controversial like that, it means the director makes you think. Because he's not going to give you what you want. He's going to give you what you need. And I love that. You know, and What You Need is one other channel that I have, which is to do with boxing with it. And I'm just saying, that's what they need to challenge you. And you must be challenged as a person in any video. Art is about showing you the mirror image of what your world is. Holding it up in front of your face. It's not about escapism all the time. It's not about giving the fans what they want. Giving the fans what they want is not necessarily what they need. Giving the fans what they want is not necessarily the right thing to do. But when you're doing business stuff, you know, like where people accuse Warner Brothers of doing things by committee, well, MCU is doing things by committee and giving you half-hashed bullshit. Which you rave and everything, and you, yeah, look at that kick up, and look at the airport scene in Civil War. That's all the people talk about, the airport scene. But really, that's it? That's what makes Civil War so great? Think about what I'm saying. Let's move on. So, at the time, we had all this controversy. This guy, Eric Kane, at the time, he loved Batman v Superman. He thought the critics were crazy about it, you know. But you had people defending it also. The Telegraph. This is around the time of Batman v Superman at the end of the year. All right. This was in 2016, 8 Reasons Why Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice was misunderstood. And then we had here May 20th, 2017, this is a year after, Batman v Superman, the most misunderstood film ever. Now it's being called a masterpiece in 2018, February 2018. You saw that. Again, here, this is at the end, the misunderstood masterpiece of 2016 by E.J. Moreno. So I'm just showing you monkeys fighting robots, right? And I'm just saying to you, in the vein of the Matrix trilogy, Batman v Superman is the same. And people are looking back at it now and they're like, especially with the Ultimate Cut out there, and people are looking back on it and like, man, that was a damn good movie. Because 2 years after, people are still talking about this movie. 2 years. 2016. 2 years after, people are talking about Batman v Superman. People are talking about Man of Steel. And now people will talk about Justice League for many years to come because, again, these movies, they're controversial to start with. And then secondly, they're always underappreciated. All right, for whatever reason. I'm not going to go into all that. All right, so you see there's many articles on it. All right, okay. Now, let's talk about Marvel, the MCU. MCU's got a ton of trilogies, actually. They had the Iron Man trilogy, right? Again, notice every single one of these damn posters is the same. All right? Then we had the Thor trilogy. Then we had the Captain America trilogy. We had 3 trilogies. When have you heard anybody talk about them being masterpieces? Who said that? Man, the Thor trilogy is a masterpiece of a trilogy. You must watch it from the first Thor movie to the last. Oh my God, the Iron Man trilogy is the greatest trilogy ever. It's like the Dark Knight. Man, the Captain America trilogy is the greatest trilogy of all time. Why don't they say that? You know why? Because those trilogies are not linked thematically. And therefore the characters are only as deep as their themes. Captain America the First Avenger was the greatest, I still maintain, the greatest Captain America movie they've all made. When you look at the Winter Soldier, it's all about Hydra infiltrating governments and governance in the Star Wars program to try and eliminate people under the guise of national security. Okay? That's basically what it is. But the connecting thread between Captain America and Captain America the Winter Soldier is Bucky. That's what keeps the movie moving. In fact, all of the trilogies, they're connected by Bucky. Yes, the guy from Hydra who was he became a computer program and was helping to push Hydra forward was there from the last Captain America film, but thematically speaking, we don't really have a connection. Captain America the First Avenger was where Captain America grew, and since then he has been stagnant. Captain America grew in the First Avenger because the First Avenger was about, first of all, seeing the attributes of him, his desire to fight, but also the attributes of teamwork and team spirit, as well as his innovativeness. And when he did get that body to accompany that, he was put on the shelf. He was put as someone there to advertise. When he finally got his chance and incorporated his destiny, he had to learn how to lead. And he was leading troops into battle and getting them killed. And he learned that he had to think about the weakest member of his team. Because now, having come from a background of being the weakest guy, he had to think about the weakest guy and care for his team. So there was this development of the character, and then he comes into a new time. Since that point in time, we have not seen him develop. He cares for members of his team still. He's still a guy who's convicted by conscience. He still likes to fight. But that's it. He has not grown. All he has been on is a journey to find Bucky. There has been no character development, no depth to the character since then. That's why I think Captain America the First Avenger is the best of all the Captain America films. And there are no linking themes. We have Captain America the First Avenger, which is focusing on the character. We got Captain America the Winter Soldier, which is focusing on Bucky. There's no themes here. Then we have Captain America Civil War. Civil War sounds like a theme, except it's about the Avengers. So each one of these members of the trilogy are about characters. You can't do that. It needs to be thematic. Otherwise, it's detached. See what I'm saying? And especially after we had Age of Ultron and we had the Avengers already, why would you want to put a thematic thing connected to these characters? And Civil War is the most sloppily put together film. And it seems as though the Captain America films actually, to me, fell apart more and more as you moved along. The Russo brothers have done nothing with the character per se. Alright? And that's the problem. If you look at each and every one of the trilogies I just spoke about that are masterpieces, the principal character is going through a journey and learning how to grow. Each one of them I just spoke about, including the DCEU trilogy, where Superman is growing as we move along. That does not happen with Captain America. It doesn't happen with Iron Man. In a limited way, it happens with Iron Man. It hasn't happened, well, actually Thor, no, it hasn't happened with Thor either. Even though the most growth that Thor has had is in the first movie, just like with Iron Man. Iron Man had the most growth where he turned full circle and he decided to care about people. Iron Man and Thor had the most growth in their first movie. After that, they have been basically moving in an adventure. They have not grown. That's the trilogies we have, and that's why they're not memorable. And that's why nobody talks about them being a masterpiece. Nobody. Because the characters are empty after the first movie. You're not doing much with them. So we're going to have another trilogy, the Avengers trilogy. And they're going to be just like every other Avengers movie. What do you expect? I saw the plot for the movies. It's not different to any of the other Avengers. They got more characters. You got some more play between characters. Thor gets a little bit more shine. But at the end of the day, it's the same Avengers movie. You got a big baddie. They're coming up to face him. There's jokes. Okay? The characters go through one or two things. But there's no crucible. There's no baptism of fire. And it does not connect to the other Avengers movies. The first Avengers movie was about them coming together. The second Avengers movie was supposed to be the part where the Empire strikes back. They don't have an Empire Strikes Back. They were victorious in the second movie. Then they had their little Civil War thing in between. And now we have Avengers Infinity War, where we know they're going to win. I mean, at the end of the day, this is what we're dealing with. The same story rehashed 3 times. How many times you got to see it? You know what's going to happen. It's just more characters. Same formula. And you know what? They don't have any innovation. A fan comes and says, does this. You can't fight Thanos alone. They have to sponge off the DCEU. They're empty for ideas. They're hollow characters. Whatever this you don't understand. And you know what's so funny? Here we have some of the Avengers. They don't even have Black Panther in there. And they're trying to emulate the DCEU, which has totally different themes. To me, this is funny as hell. Talk about empty characters, Mr. whatever your name is, Bunsen or whatever. This is empty. Oh, it's giving the fans what they want to see, a good kick up with a whole bunch of characters. Yeah, but it's just empty fun. At the end of the day, you learn nothing. There is no character growth. The characters are enshrined as they are. Eric Banner, or David Banner, whatever the fuck his name is, Bruce Banner, right? He's the same. He hasn't changed. He ain't grown nowhere. Oh, he's been in a relationship, but his character hasn't grown anywhere. Thor hasn't grown. Doctor Strange, after his start-off movie where he learned a couple things, he hasn't grown. He's still an asshole. Captain America hasn't grown. Black Panther hasn't grown. So what the hell? Iron Man hasn't grown. There is no depth to these characters. They are pop stuff. Guardians of the Galaxy, Star-Lord hasn't grown. Gamora, after the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie, has not grown. These characters haven't grown. Why do I care about them? I don't care about them. I know what I'm going to get. The same shit. But the DCU has lack of depth of characters. Wonder Woman, the #1 superhero origin film until Black Panther. How is that possible? Not only did we have a little bit of humor in this movie, but we had depth. For the first time we learned love is the only thing that can save the world. Not any superhero, because the focus was not on the superhero. It was on the values the superhero possesses as you go through the journey and as the superhero grows. And we saw her grow again in Justice League. And we'll see her grow again in a Wonder Woman 2. Because these characters continuously evolve. Maybe not in the direction you wanted them to. So you feel sour because they didn't give you what you wanted to see. But they grow nonetheless. And that makes a movie a masterpiece. That's why you can watch it again and again and again. Because when you grow up, you could actually watch these characters on the screen and identify and say, oh man, that is a hero's journey. So Black Panther has a chance to do that, but in Infinity War, I know he's going to be shortchanged. I already know what it is. But his movie had growth because he departed from some of the standards his father and his generation had. And he started to see that I need to be more inclusive of other people. And seeing his family go on both sides of the divide, being a refugee and also incorporating and bringing in refugees, he said, no, man, we cannot just turn our back on the world. We need to offer more. We need to come out in the open and share our resources. He broke tradition. That's a lot of growth for a character. Never mind the CGI sometimes was shitty. And the Wakanda kind of looked like Krypton. You know what I'm saying? The standard of CG. The story was good. And so the character had depth. He didn't have much depth in Civil War. They kind of slapped him in there. But he definitely had depth in his own movie with his own director directing it. But I know it's back to the status quo for Infinity War, sadly. Good actor. Great actor, actually. And you see the title, His Father's Legacy. His Father's Legacy. See what I'm saying? Gravitas, depth. Something that makes movies go beyond just the pop entertainment and the empty entertainment, Mr. Bonson. Something you don't know about. Suicide Squad. You know what's so funny about Suicide Squad? Again, the media and some of the major channels out there tried to badmouth this movie. Strangely enough, the funny thing about that is this. They tried to badmouth this movie, but some of the typical people who usually hate the DCEU actually enjoyed it. It's one of the most unorthodox movies out there. People like to compare it to Guardians of the Galaxy, but I think it's a totally different movie from Guardians of the Galaxy, even though they did have some similar approaches, like music in there and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's a different movie because it's dealing with different characters. These are not good people. They're not people that you want walking free. Quite frankly. These aren't anti-heroes. These are hardcore criminals, right? So it's a totally different movie in that respect. But what I like about this movie is that as much as this movie was bashed, in fact, I think it's the lowest critical acclaimed movie in terms of box office. This movie had critical acclaim. That shit sunk at the box office. This shit couldn't make the money that Suicide Squad did. And the critics praised it, and people were like, meh. And then Doctor Strange, again, didn't make the money that this movie made, and people were saying, meh. And these are recent movies. In fact, Doctor Strange, I think, came out the same year with this movie. And my point is this. How come you say that these characters were better characters than Suicide Squad, but it don't make the money like Suicide Squad? What's up with that? That means the public liked Suicide Squad more than these stupid movies. Because, why? Because they're predictable. They're formulaic. They're the same Marvel jokes. In fact, Doctor Strange, he's not that funny. But they made Doctor Strange into a funny dude. They took the Guardians of the Galaxy formula and they slapped it on Doctor Strange. You know what I'm saying? Ant-Man, he's a funny dude. I agree. So I was cool with it. And I think it's a fun little movie. It ain't on the level of this. And this was just shit. But the point is, I know they have a shit Hulk right now. They have a shit Hulk inside of the MCU. You know what I'm saying? So you're looking at Suicide Squad, which they call a shit movie, and they call the villain a shit villain. Yet, for some reason, they forget about the villains in these movies. They forget about them. They really do. Or they praise them unworthily. Let's not talk about Thor Ragnarok, okay? And I'm just saying, you can bullshit your way in the media. People are going to see through your bullshit over time. All right, Ant-Man and the Wasp. We're not going to remember this shit in T-minus 3 months after release. And it's not going to be memorable. This shit we don't remember. Ask people what the story of Doctor Strange was in a couple of words, because they're not thematic. Ant-Man is cool because Ant-Man showed you diminutive structure. We've seen it before, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and blah, 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 blah. But Ant-Man was fun. All right, it's a fun little flick, not to be taken too seriously. And it outdid itself. And that's cool. But at the end of the day, this shit ain't memorable. This shit's more memorable than that. And this shit is more memorable than all of them. And people at the home box office showed that. People bought Suicide Squad like crazy, showing you just how much people like the movie. And that goes for Batman v Superman. And that's going for Justice League. And that's going for Wonder Woman. It's going for all the fucking DCEU films. Because guess what? They are grossing in home box office most of the MCU films. You know why? Because people beginning to realize, fuck the critics. Fuck all those people talking shit about this movie. This thing's damn good. And the more people point out the depths of these movies, is the more people are like, God damn, I gotta go watch this again. Alright? Because they realize how much inherent value these movies have. It's like going and talking about Lord of the Rings. You could talk about it forever. It's like talking about Harry Potter movies. You can talk about that shit forever. Star Wars movies. You can talk about that shit forever. Because it's always got something in it you haven't seen before. And that's the fun in these movies. The Matrix. There's a lot of stuff to talk about. That's what makes movies fun. That's what makes them rewatchable. Not, oh, I love this scene. I can watch it forever. Who gives a fuck about a scene over and over again? Unless it's really gorgeous. And I haven't seen any gorgeous scenes in the MCU. I could recall the chateau scene where Neo is taking on, and this is quite back in 2003, right? Chateau scene where Neo is taking on all those vampire people. And he traps one guy who's trying to strike him, and he catches another thing with his foot. And then he just flips it a certain way. It's so stylistically sick to watch. That shit is like epic, okay? And then, of course, we have different scenes where, even the freeway scene, it's kind of tired now. But there's certain scenes in The Matrix where he blocks a sword with his hand and just a little bit of blood comes out of his hand. And the dude's like, see, he's just a man. These are moments that, man, you see, you gotta understand. Maybe people have gotten dumber and more stupid, but I'm not entertained by just action. You gotta do something I never seen before. And the shit I've been seeing in the MCU, it's tired. Okay? It's tired. There is no creativity to it. You see what I'm saying? So, once again, why do you open your mouth, bro? Why you open your mouth? You could have just kept your trap shut and we would have been cool. Guardians of the Galaxy. I don't know what language that is, but Guardians of the Galaxy. You look at the fucking posters, man. No fucking imagination whatsoever, man. Oh my God. Look at this shit. No imagination. Spider-Man Homecoming. Nothing. Okay. Spider-Man Homecoming made money. But at the end of the day, you got to put Iron Man in there to promote that movie. Wonder Woman. You didn't have to put nobody in there. She held her own. You had to put Iron Man and his bodyguard, whatever the guy's name is, inside the movie. You had him show up in the beginning and the end. Wonder Woman didn't need that shit. Black Panther didn't need that shit. Those are iconic films. Spider-Man Homecoming is not. And this shit, I don't need to say what it is. You don't take this shit seriously. I don't even know why they're showing up. Well, let them show up. I mean, it's cool. In Infinity War, it's all good. Clash of different styles. I actually kind of enjoy that. That's cool. But at the end of the day, Guardians of the Galaxy was never something you were supposed to take seriously. So it will never be, it will just never be, if they have a trilogy, it will never be a masterpiece. It is just what it is. And again, I'm not saying that all masterpieces need to be serious movies, but my point being, a masterpiece is something that pushes the frontiers, makes you think, makes you reason. It's not just meta humor. You talk masterpieces, man. Do you even know what a masterpiece is? So when you say that these characters, Mr. Bunsen, when you say that these characters, their personality is shallow, only somebody with a limited intellect understands what he's saying. You have character-driven movies and you have plot-driven movies. But even so, the epics, Gladiator, the epics, Speed, etc., they have more depth and gravitas to them than just the character that's carrying the movie. There must be an underlying theme that is deeply rooted in the movie that makes the movie something that can become a masterpiece. Think about anything. Think about any movie that really is great, and you will see that. And a masterpiece is beyond great. It's something which is memorable. You remember it for all time. It just keeps coming. It just gets better and better with time. And I can tell you right now, the rewatchability of Marvel movies, the only Marvel movie I think that's rewatchable like that, there are two of them, is Captain America the First Avenger and Black Panther. Those are the best Marvel movies out there. Not even Iron Man, because Iron Man is shit. You think about it, the only thing that really makes Iron Man cool is him coming out in the open saying, I'm Iron Man. That was pretty revolutionary. But that's it. The novelty of it, the rest of the movies is shit. It's the same old Marvel bullshit over and over again. I'm tired of that shit. Spider-Man. Before the MCU, Spider-Man was, and still is, a fantastic movie. Not Spider-Man 2, Spider-Man. Spider-Man 2 is good with Doc Ock and they, but Spider-Man to me is the best of them all. The very first one. Okay? And my point being this. It's what the character has to go through. Not only what the character has to go through, but thematically, what are they pushing? And Spider-Man was all about him taking on the burden of what his uncle had told him. It's the tragedy of never saying goodbye to your uncle. It's the tragedy of allowing this thing to happen. It's tragedy makes for memorable movies, but also is able to hammer home the ideology of the character. What's the ideology of Iron Man? Oh, he wears an iron suit. Okay, what's his ideology? What keeps him going? What drives him? What is he? What is his outcome? What does he want the world to be? What's the ideology that isolates Captain America from Iron Man? What's the ideology that isolates Black Panther from Captain America and Iron Man? What are their ideologies? What is the core of that character? And if you can't tell me that for any of them, what's the core ideology of Thor? If you can't tell me that, then you just watched a bunch of bullshit. You just watched a bunch of bullshit. You just been carried on a ride. So if you feel butthurt about this video, too bad. You shouldn't have started it. I told you keep your mouth shut. Infinity War is not going to be great, in my opinion. It's going to be one of those similar Marvel movies with the same Marvel stuff. It'll be entertaining for a minute and then you'll get bored of it. Because it's the same shit over and over again. Because that's all they've been giving you for the last 20 movies. Rehashed bullshit. The novelty of it wears off after a while. The novelty of Thanos, because Thanos don't look great, that novelty is going to disappear real fast. Anyways, I hope you guys have a good one. Like I said before, you don't start nothing, there'll be nothing. You keep starting it, I'm going to just bring it on. And you're going to look stupid. So keep it going, man. Larry Bonson, shut your mouth. Shut your mouth about the DCEU. Shut your mouth. Right? We all know, all of you trolling, you troll DC to try and promote Marvel. Alright? Because you got no fucking ideas. Your ideas are drained. Be happy that people at least go to the cinema to watch Marvel movies for the moment. Be happy. Because just now, ain't going to be nobody watching it, your shit, if you keep it up. But if you shut your mouth, watch how the game is done, right? Enjoy your Marvel movies. Nobody's telling you no. I watch guys go for 2 hours on a podcast and say absolutely nothing about the substance of the Marvel movies. They would just keep on saying, oh, well, you know what? Captain America, when Iron Man came out, man, great movie, man. It was a great movie. Man, I've watched the comics and everything, and it was just a great movie. They said that over and over for every single Marvel movie. They had nothing, zip, to say about ideas and themes and take-home messages, anything. So if you want to be like that, you want to be, I'm just a dumbass. Just like hype. Under the hype. Be that. You know what I'm saying? But don't come on here saying stupid things and projecting what Marvel is deficient in onto DC. Just chill. Sit back. Chill. Don't say nothing. Learn. Take notes. Alright? All you Marvel fans out there that love Marvel, nobody's telling you not to do so. I hope you go into Infinity War. I hope it breaks all records. But one thing you don't do is step to the DCEU and say shit about it. I'm going to respond. And I'm going to expose Marvel's ass. And like I said before, I saw the plot to Infinity War. To me, it like every other Marvel plot I've seen. It is unflattering. Okay? And I'm sorry about that. But it is what it is. You ain't flattering me. You're not going to pull a fly on me. I ain't going to drink it. If you want Marvel to fuck you over, fine. Swallow that fucking, man. But for me, I prefer creativity, themes, a story, and something that I can actually translate to other people. All right? You guys have a great one.